Welcome, Wargamers, as we dive into the hellish wastes of the Eightpoints and talk about a location that we know is important despite the information being very scant about it. And of course, I'm speaking of the city of Karngrad, nestled deep within the Eightpoints, and in this video I want to discuss where it's located and why that location matters so much, how the city might function, and all of this info, again, is scant at best, but it comes from the Warcry mini-story series, like book that came out when Warcry first dropped, as well as other books and expansions like Broken Realms Morathi. And so what is Karngrad as a city? Well, it's a major settlement within the Eightpoints, a city amongst the desolate wastes of chaos. Specifically, it's located in an area called the Bloodwind Spoil. There's actually a sweet picture of the Eightpoints that helps kind of put this in perspective, where this is a pocket realm. It is a disc like the others, and the Varanspire, the home of Archaon the Everchosen, is right in the dead center. And from there, the realm is divided into 8 different regions, and really, the Bloodwind Spoil is the one we know the most about. This is where the original Warcry set took place, and where its Varanthax's Maw is, as we discussed in an earlier video this week. And there's been several other shoutouts and mentions of it throughout the lore. The geography of this area is dominated by a few very important things: sharp, jagged mountains towards the outer edge. Long, rolling plains cover most of its surface, and these are not nice, prairie fields or anything like that. The ground emits poisonous gas, and wild beasts of incredible size stalk the hills. And all of the flora here has been corrupted and become extremely hostile. There's also a few desert-like locations scattered around these mountains, because the mountains are blocking rain from getting to several regions and so forth. Now, it stands to reason that within the Bloodwind Spoil, a realm gate would exist, at least one of the mighty All Gates, right? And these are the gates that connect the Eightpoints to each of the 8 realms around it, and what makes this location such a strategic area. And when I say this location, I mean the Eightpoints total. However, I went through all the maps that I could find, and I couldn't figure out which All Gate leads into this section, if there is one specifically. If you know, and put it in the comments, please, I would love to know where it's located at. Because my initial guess was to say that it's the All Gate for Ghiran. Because remember, in Broken Realms Morathi, they did walk through the Bloodwind Spoil to get through Varanthax's Maw. They kind of want around Karngrad, which is the point of this video. We'll come back to it soon, I promise. But we don't actually know for certain if the Realm Gate was there. We don't know where they actually entered, we just know where they ended up. And that they traveled several days to get there. So regardless, near the center of the pizza slice, so to speak, that makes up the Bloodwind Spoil is this city of Karngrad. And when I first heard about this place, my mind immediately asked 2 significant questions. Why is this place important? Because honestly, to exist and be allowed to exist and have some form of collaboration amongst, warlords and all these kinds of things, it has to be important. Like, it has to produce something that Archaon wants. And secondly, how does it function? Like, how does a city full of marauding psychopaths work? In such a miserable and hostile environment as the Eightpoints is, and specifically the Bloodwind Spoil, there has to be something that keeps this city alive, some industry or resource that makes it important enough that all these disparate chaos factions would work together to build something like a city. And once that city is made, how do you govern it, right? All these people want to be in charge, a lot of them want to kill one another, it's just insanity. Now, we aren't told outright what Karngrad has to offer, like as a specific, export or something like that. But if you look around the region of it, we can make a lot of very reasonable assumptions. Archaon is dead set on conquering the entirety of the mortal realms, and that requires a monumental war effort. Swords, shields, boots, slaves, food, carts, and so on. Creating and maintaining an army is a massive amount of work and resources. It's very likely that Karngrad fills one or multiple of those needs. I mean, just looking at our map, we can point out a few of them. To the southwest is Slaver's Folly, a place that hunts, gathers, and subjugates the necessary human stock to work the various foundries. feed the troops, and other menial tasks that the Slaves to Darkness would use slaves to do. To the northeast is Varenthax's Mon, which we've already covered. It's a major site of smithing and forging, and quite frankly, one of the most important places for Archaon, because it looks like Varanite, which is a resource harvested there, is kind of be like the next MacGuffin going forward into this next chapter. To the straight east is the Blood Lake Basin, a massive lake with water tinted red from all the killing going on, but water is a rare and precious resource in the Bloodwind Spoil nonetheless. My point is, we don't necessarily need to know what Karngrad as a city offers Archaon's war effort, but we do know that scattered all around it are these very valuable resources, and resources like that tend to drift to major hubs of civilization for either trade or transportation. It just all gets scooped up into Karngrad, and then from there the supply lines can go straight up towards Archaon's tower. And from that kind of logic, I can see all these warlords from all over the place, right? These various regions who all have different things to offer, carving a life out for themselves in both trade and war. And Karngrad is near the center of the Bloodwind Spoil, and as such, I think it makes it very reasonable to assume it acts as a trading hub for anything in the region that can be offered to Archaon's efforts. Again, if you want something, everyone in the Eightpoints jumps to get it. They all want his favor, they all want to be the guy who solved his problem, so to speak. What can sometimes be a bit harder to understand, though, despite a bit more clarity, it's kind of weird how that worked out, is how the city itself runs. The city of Karngrad is broken up into 7 districts. Each one is being governed by a leader known as a Talon. So we have a crude council of 7 Talons at the top, and honestly, that's kind of all we know. We get glimpses of the city from the Corvus Cabal and Cypher Lord's short stories in particular. They have tight corridors, high multi-level buildings, and so on. It has basic services like blacksmiths, bars, chaos shrines, graveyards, and so on. And there's like a full city hierarchy where everyone has jobs and, government work and all those kinds of stuff at every level. In fact, we get to see a bit of that when it comes specifically to the Cypher Lord's story as they infiltrate one of the Talons. And these 2 warbands use the physical environments and the clear lines of power and control to manipulate events here. The Corvus Cabal basically using the city for this amazing parkour as they dance around and do whatever they need to do, and the Cypher Lords poisoning and impersonating various members of leadership to seize control. And honestly, when I think of how a city of chaos worshippers would function on a daily basis, it oddly enough makes me kind of think of the game Necromunda. If you're not familiar with that, I have a series going on for it. I would love for you to check it out. It'd mean the world to me. But the idea is everyone here is super cutthroat, backstabbing, and trying to seize money, land, and power that they can get their hands on. And while they are just these kind of roving gangs, each one takes control of an industry to retain value. To have some leverage and some poker chip, so to speak, they can extort upon one another. So in Necromunda, that's things like power stations and recycling and mining, where in Karngrad I can see this more being stuff like, these are the slave traders, I control the smiths, the water well, the construction, and so on. And at the top are these bosses, these Talons, who keep them all in check, trying to constantly gain favor, and they point them and pit them against each other. And as a result, these disparate forces, these warbands, these gangs, however you want to articulate it, build a little ecosystem of mutual self-interest. And to be honest, that's about all we know for certain. But the reason I wanted to talk about it is that I find the idea of a functioning, bustling city of chaos to be so interesting, and I want more stories and life there. Right? Minor gang wars, family lines, and so on. It's a place that has such a crushingly bleak feel that anything surviving there has to be brutal. Because if nothing else, there's always this, the baseline for all these people is might makes right. So you gotta do stuff to assert dominance and power. That doesn't go away just because you're not a marauding warband. These are all people who need to constantly assert their value and their control. And while GW has done a wonderful job of fleshing out some of the lore for Chaos Undivided, I feel like the Slaves to Darkness Battle Tome was phenomenal in terms of giving us a little more flavor to the faction. I still think we need a spotlight on some locations like the Eightpoints and specifically Karngrad, because it's one that we've already mentioned before and adding significance to it would go a long way. And so as always, I like to end these videos by talking about what makes this idea cool. Why did I talk about Karngrad if there's just not a lot of information about it? Well, 7 talons means there's different ways to run the city, okay? It can take different flavors from each of them. What that means is, we saw 1 talon in Cypher Lords, and I won't reveal any more about it, but it's a very interesting read, highly suggest it. And then it means there's 6 more that can be very different. Some can be very regal and austere and those kinds of things, and others can be very brutal and primal, and they can focus on different things and have warbands beneath them competing in different ways for their favor. I love that kind of stuff. In addition, it is a multi-racial city, and so when we think about how to describe a city, a lot of times it's based on the traditions and that kind of stuff of the people who live within it, but it's so diverse is what I'm saying, is that I really do like that you have chaos, obviously humans, but there are chaos dwarven mentioned multiple times. There are now chaos elves because of Warcry, it's been affirmed there, and things like ogres and all kinds of stuff. It's all just there, and I just want to know what that life looks like when all these different, not even just values, because they're all kind of chaosy, but I mean, an elf who lives hundreds of years is going to look at the world different than the human chaos marauder next to him. And so what does that crock pot of values and worldviews look like when it's all jammed together? And honestly, I like everything around the city, right? It feels important just because of everything. Even if it is just a trading hub, it doesn't matter. It's vital things that move through it every single day that make the rest of the narrative, Archaon's armies and the forces of chaos being everywhere, possible. And this is just a last little note for me. I like to know about the evil lair, right? If you're thinking about the movie The Lion King, where it's everything the light touches is our land. What about the shadow regions? And he's just don't go there. It's well, that's lame. I want to see it. I want to go there. Show me the villain's lair. What has he built? Because showing me what Archaon's able to build and manage, and I don't mean manage middle management type stuff. I mean corral all these psychopaths makes him seem cooler. Right, and so show me that. What does that look like? I think I would love to read more books about it, but you tell me your thoughts. Friends, if you know more about Karngrad, go ahead and leave it in the comments down below. Let me know what you'd like to see fleshed out about the city. This is something that I think would be incredible for the team over at Cubicle 7, who do the Soulbound RPG. It's the AOS RPG version. I would love for them to take a crack at it, because they have some phenomenal writing when it comes to other cities and locations, as far as giving backgrounds and exports and all the things that really go into creating a cultural identity. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next Age of Sigmar lore video. Happy wargaming. Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed that video. It was made possible by the folks over here to the left. These are my top supporters over here on YouTube and on Patreon that keep this channel going. If you'd like to learn more about how to become a supporter and get some cool things in the process, like exclusive pictures and interactions with me, and get your questions answered here on the channel, go ahead and click any of the links down below or the join button on the community page over on YouTube. Regardless of your choice, I wanted to thank you so much for joining me with this video, and I look forward to seeing you in my next one. Happy wargaming.